program is not suited for children or unfunny cunts. Actually, it's really not suitable for anyone with full brain cells. Viewer discretion is advised. Fuckheads.
They're coming to take me away, ha-ha. They're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha. To the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time. And I'll be happy to see those nice young men in their clean white coats. And they're coming to take me away, ha-ha.
Hi, I'm Rob Marco.
I'm Trenton Peterson.
I'm a messed up
dude.
And we're live. Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome back to Messed Up Dudes. I'm Rob Marco. He's Trenton Peterson. And yesterday marked an important milestone for Trenton. 9 months since he fucking got high or drunk. So 9 months sobriety
9
yesterday.
months sober. Feels amazing. So that was good. Just wanted to share that with everyone.
And today's guest is Scott Despres. I can't ever pronounce his fucking last name, but you all know him as Maverick Wild, the wrestler mostly in New England. He did a few stints in WCW, did some stuff in WWF, Ring of Honor, and now he's out of the business. And he's ready to talk about the good and the bad. And he's also struggled with some mental health issues like me and Trenton, and we'll bring that up as well. So, further ado, let's bring Scott on.
Here you go. Hey, Scott.
What's going on? How you doing? I love the intro song, by the way. Big Dr. Demento, Mark. Love it. Coming.
I thought that was perfect for our show.
Love it.
Yeah, I threw that together. Rob picked that song, and I just made the video with it.
Next year, you'll have to do Dead Puppies.
That's a good one.
So, how does it feel not to be involved in the wrestling business anymore?
That's an odd question because I wasn't involved in it for probably a decade, and then I wanted to start. I became a kind of a shut-in, and I kind of lost track of some of my friends. So I was like, my friends are still kind of involved in wrestling, so I'll start going to the shows. And then I said, maybe I'll start helping train people. And that was about 3 years ago, and now I regret it. I'm better off out of it.
That's how I was. I was out for 10 years, and then Sheldon brought me back in for a couple shows, and then he stopped running, and I've been offered by other companies to come in. I'm like, nah, I'm all good.
I'm big on that, Rob. You've probably noticed, you've been around me a few times over the years, and been a few places that I've wrestled at. I always lock myself into certain promoters because I didn't want to deal with, frankly, crap. I wanted to show up and wrestle, and I worked very hard, and I wanted to ignore what's the best way to term it? Just the flotsam and the jetsam around it. I just always ignored it. There was always went on around me, who's dating who's effing who's screwing who out of money, and just I always managed to stay out of that because I was never the most talented athlete, but I was so head down and concentrated on what I did that stuff I really never got into my head, to be honest.
High school drama.
Yeah, really. I always managed to avoid it because I was just too busy being, I don't know. I'm a weird guy. I'm goofy to talk to, but I'm very intense when I'm working. Always very intense. So I put so much into it, I never had to deal with a lot of the tomfoolery that goes on in professional wrestling. Let's put it that way.
So is that how you two know each other? Was through the wrestling business?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe I met Rob originally working on Sheldon shows. If I'm misstating the case, I'm sorry.
Yep. Well, when I started for them in 2003, and you were still the champion. So.
Yeah. Are we past a minute yet?
Yes, we are. You can say whatever you want.
Fucking God Christ. Jesus Christ. I can swear. I don't know if Rob was there for this, but the night I won the belt, Sheldon Goldberg put me over for his title one time, and I was never afraid to be naked backstage. So somebody went to take a picture of me, and I wasn't dressed yet. All I had was the belt on, and literally nothing else. And
I remember that actually.
Somebody insisted on taking a picture of me, so I insisted they take a picture of me with nothing but the belt on.
It's like Shawn Michaels' Playgirl.
Then, of course, I'm doing like hip gyrations and yelling out as loud as I can. My dick is the champion, and my balls are the tag team champions.
That was in Somerville, right?
Yes, it was.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, the famous Somerville bivouac that we used to dress in at good times. Yes.
Oh, that was terrible.
Oh, I loved it. The worse the situation, the better I love it. I'm just so like a lot of people dream to go, I want to wrestle in Madison Square Garden. I want to wrestle in the Tokyo Dome. I'm fine with the Hudson Lions Club. I love that. I really do. It's just so I never had a big yen to make money at this. You know, I really didn't. You know, I got into this for a lot of different reasons, but money was not one of them. So.
Yeah, just in our comment section, somebody was asking what I was drinking, so I'm showing them it's not soda, it's sparkling ice. It's flavored water, no sugar.
You're still off the soda?
Still off the ice. When I was in the hospital, I did get one Coke Zero, but that's about it. I just had to have it.
Yeah.
I am a soda maniac. When I was in mental hospital 6 months ago, they would put us down in the cafeteria. I would steal as much soda as I possibly could. I'm so addicted to this stuff; it's ridiculous.
I was in one that wouldn't let us have soda, and I was jonesing.
I like that we're 4 minutes into this, so we're talking about our mental hospital experiences.
That's why it's called Messed Up Dudes.
You were talking about it before you even came in.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun.
Oh yeah.
I don't mean to steal the interview on you guys, and you know I don't know, Trenton, what your experiences in hospitals, and I'm not going to ask you beyond that.
No, I'm completely open.
I know Rob's had a little fun with that. I mean, you know,
yeah, we've been in.
That was an odd experience because I was in there. Basically, I was the only one who'd been in there never before. You know, which is odd. I'm 53 years old and I'm checking in for the first time. But what I found was annoying is I don't know if Rob ever came across this. A lot of the people in there, they literally have no place to go when they're let go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would talk about that to the nurse. It's like, oh no, we don't just let people loose on the street. I was like, yes, you fucking do.
Yeah. They did to me when
You're telling yourself that to feel better, but that's what happens.
They discharged me to live in my car. They said
that's exactly
in your car.
I kept telling them these guys are all going to car life. That's not a home, you know.
I was begging to be put in the program, and they're like, "Oh no, you can just go sleep in your car." I'm like, "I need a program."
Yeah,
they don't really.
That was such an eye-opening experience to me.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like, there's a lot of people who like purposely go to jail just to have somewhere to sleep and get food, and just to not be on the street. It's fucking sad.
Have you ever experienced the shared clothes baskets?
No.
So when I was in Fuller House in North Attleboro, and they depended on people who had nobody else, and thank God. I mean, my wife is. Before we logged on here, I was making fun of her. My wife is a goddamn fucking saint. All right, she was there every goddamn night. It's almost 2 hours from this house, and she was there every night. And I would get done with my meetings. I would look around. It's like nobody here has anybody like this in their life. But they had the shared clothes basket, and they depend on like volunteer clothing. There was some Greek guy in there who could barely speak English, and they got him dressed up in a pair of yoga pants and no shirt because that was what they had for donations.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was in one time, and this one kid was offering people money to buy their clothes off him.
My wife and I actually, there was a larger girl there, and she was getting released onto the street. She literally had no clothing. So me and my wife talked about it, and we went and we got some sizes from her, and we bought her some basic clothing and stuff like that. Because I was in a rough spot. I was in a mental hospital. Obviously, in a rough spot.
Yeah.
I had people outside of that place to rely on, to lean on. Most people don't.
No,
Yeah.
I say it's some of these people are sad, and some of these people are so far beyond gone. It's like it's really tragic. Like we had this one woman who she was normal during the day, then come like 10 o'clock at night, she would rampage the whole unit, knock everything over, knock the trashes over. I was watching the Celtics game with her, just fine, and all of a sudden I go in my room after the game and she's rampaging the place.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you're in a spot where people are just, I don't know, they've been in a system forever. They've been kind of half treated. It's a shit show. It really is.
And the staff, some of the staff care, but there's some staff members who are just there for the paycheck.
They care. A lot of them care really good. Even the ones that are delusional and they don't think people are getting released on the street. I think they tell them that. I think they tell themselves that so they get through the day. You know,
exactly.
That's a hard fucking job.
Oh,
you're dealing with every deficiency mentally that you're possibly going to ever come across, and some of them are violent. I'm on April 10th. I'm having my second shoulder replacement, and to be frank with you, what led to it was dead. I was going to have it done anyways. I had to break up a fight when I was in the mental hospital.
Yeah.
They had one male orderly, and the rest were all female.
Yep.
And this one kid chased another kid down and jumped him. And one orderly went over and grabbed the kid, and he grabbed the wrong person. Not his fault. He didn't know. He just ran into it. He grabbed the wrong person. He grabbed the guy that was not the aggressor. And then here comes the aggressor. And I was like, oh, I can't watch somebody's face get turned to hamburger. I just can't.
No.
So I can't move my arms that well. But I managed to get over the top and just bear hug him from behind and hold him down. But he was thrashing so bad, it's just what little was left on my shoulder, he tore it apart, you know. So, and I was not happy with the hospital at that point. They still call for the ambulance bill and the medical bill at the hospital, which I refused to pay because I broke up a fight on their floor.
Exactly.
You know? It's like, go pound sand. It doesn't come against my credit. I don't care. Fuck off.
Yeah.
I was the same way with medical bills.
I'm not like that with all of them, but that one, it's like, fuck you. I helped you out, and you're trying
exactly.
trying to ram about $2,200 up my ass. No. Like I didn't sue you, frankly, you know?
Yeah. So basically, you've had quite the career, and you've run into a lot of interesting people in wrestling. I can tell you, me as one of them.
Wrestling is full of interesting characters, and I mean that mostly in the best way. I don't think anybody gets into wrestling that is. You could probably speak to this. Did you ever meet a normal person in a wrestling locker room? Think about it. Somebody would consider, well, that guy is well adjusted, and that guy really has his shit together. You don't.
Some of the though, if there's anyone I have, they didn't last long.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's always been my contention. It's like everybody gets into this, myself included. Narcissistic, egomaniacs, have low self-esteem sometimes, all sorts of deficiencies in their personalities. And when somebody like normal and well-adjusted comes walking in, like 90% of the room looks at us like, what the fuck is their problem? Jesus Christ.
Look at them like they're the weird one.
Why can't you be fucked up like the rest of us? What's
exactly.
wrong with you? It's a business that you have to be kind of off kilter is the best way to put it. And there's plenty of off kilter people in it that are good, and there's a few that are not. So
even a lot of the big names that were brought in were some fucked up guys.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Like, look at our friend Tony Atlas, of all people.
Tony Atlas is one of my favorite people on the face of the earth.
Him and Denny
he is screwed up. He's screwed up and comes right out as, you know. Here's a guy that the guy's probably made hundreds of thousands of dollars in professional wrestling and has no problem coming and saying, yeah, I got a foot fetish. I like women stepping on my face. What are you going to do about it?
Him and Denny have been at a few things together, and Denny absolutely loves Tony. They have a great relationship.
He talks in that Georgia drawl, and it makes him sound like he's not maybe all that intelligent. That's a smart dude.
Oh, he is.
He's a very smart dude. You know, he really is. Tony's very entertaining.
I like his art.
Smart.
He's really good. His drawings and stuff. His art's really good.
Well, he's just, he's a very talented guy. I love Tony.
Another guy that I got to go on a show with was Tito Santana. Now he might be a normal guy. He might be well adjusted. Tito Santana. He's the one. Now that I think about it, he might be the well adjusted guy that I've met in the business.
I would agree. I met Tito. Of course, I met him when I did jobs backstage. I think he was the Matador at that point, or El Matador. And you didn't get much out of him at that point. He was very quiet. He kept to himself. All the other guys were loud and obnoxious. He was sitting there eating a carrot sticks out of a baggie. And but when I really met him, I was working for Jeff Costa, and they brought him up to work with Greg Valentine as like a rematch to the old Intercontinental Series. And they had a good match. And Santana was just very well spoken and very polite. And I wondered, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I don't know if you were doing indies when Piper started making the indie round. But I got to be with Piper, and he might be the nicest person I've ever met in wrestling. I mean, he was asking me more questions about my life than I did his.
I've met Piper. Have you ever seen he did a tape one time to show Anthony Green do an interview, which is, I don't know what happened to it. I've looked on it on YouTube forever, and it's disappeared. But I've only met Piper a few times. Through conjecture, Jeff Costa knew him because Roddy Piper got started up in Vancouver with Al Tomko, and that's where Jeff spent the majority of his career, up in Vancouver working for Al Tomko. And Roddy would come to the shows, and Jeff told me the same thing. He was the most polite person you will ever meet. He was so respectful and so gentle around you. And then you see the way he's, you see the way he's been in riots, in knife fights. It's like, how is this one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life? I don't get it. Again, a business full of very strange characters.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
So in the indie scene too, there's some people, and there's some. And you try to say you're like probably one of the most liked guys in the circuit, but there are a few people who don't like you.
Yeah. Well, so for years and years and years, my wife said, "Oh, everybody loves you," and I said, Dale, I'm loud and obnoxious and opinionated. It's not possible for everybody to like me, And then when all of a sudden she starts realizing, wow, maybe not everybody likes you. And you know what? Let's put it this way. Everybody that I need to like me, man, they like me. A few that I don't need to like me, they like me too. I can't, if I'm hitting about a 70% ratio, I'm doing okay. I'm not worried about it. And I think that's about where I am.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You can't please everyone.
No.
You're doing all right if you got 70 ratio.
Yeah.
It's usually the good people that like you. It's the people with skeletons in their closet because they know you'll call them out on their shit. So
I don't want to call them out on their shit, but if they're going to be assholes to me, they're going to have to get it back to some degree. I'm sorry. I don't need that kind of shit in my life, frankly.
Too old for that now.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing that happened with Chase Del Monte is just, fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. But because when the Johnny Vegas situation came out, a lot of people, and you were one of the most outspoken. You went on Leo Connor's show, spoke out about it really well. I want to say hi to Leo. I'm not as good as an interviewer as you, and I never will be. But
I think I should tell you the story of when I was going up to do that show. I told you off air that I would not say anything that I could not corroborate. However, I was on my way. For people who don't know, Johnny Vegas was an experienced local wrestler in this area. I knew him. I consider him a friend. A lot of guys knew him. They consider him a friend. He was doing the training of the younger talent at NEPWA, I guess you call it. I just always call it the Chaotic Wrestling School.
Yeah.
Apparently some accusations came to light about he was harassing students there. And so he was moving to Florida anyways. And I think to their credit, they probably got rid of him before then, but he was moving to Florida anyways. I would also like to say in all of this, I've never made an accusation towards Chase Del Monte or anything. I've always tried to keep it level, what I know, and this is it. What I do know is when I was on my way up to do the Leo Connor show that day, him and a guy named Brad Cashew were literally messaging me nonstop about meeting me first before I went to do this show. And I just kept telling them, listen, I'm going to say what I say. I'm not going to accuse you of anything, and just watch. I don't know what else to tell you. And they literally did that up until 45 minutes before he showed up for the show. They actually offered to meet me in the parking lot, I believe, to discuss this. And eventually I just put an end to it. I said, listen, I'm doing the show. You can watch it, and you can judge me however you want to at that point. When I went on the show, I said that so basically what came to a head was Johnny Vegas came back from Florida, and he showed up at what would be Next Gen Pro Wrestling School, where Mike Hollow and Scott Reed were training at, and Bud Browning owns. And they took a picture with him. That sent Cashew and Chase into, they were frenetically angry. And in some ways, I don't blame them. I mean, they thought he was gone, and I get it, But then what they started to do was they started tossing blame around to all the older guys for this guy, and quid pro quo. When all this stuff started happening, I mean, I've known this guy. I've known Johnny Vegas for 30 years. You don't want to believe it, No. But unfortunately, I started doing some poking around to older guys that had been around him when they were younger. And unfortunately, I found a couple of cases yeah, this sounds like it may be accurate, which is what I said on the show. Is I think he did this. I make no bones about it, and I've never made any bones about it. And, in a way, I told you I kept my head down when I wrestled. And I almost feel guilty about it because, people tried to push up on me for lack of a better term when I was young. And I fought back, and that was fine for me, but it didn't do anything for anybody else. And I wasn't wrestling anymore. So all of a sudden, the same shit that's been happening for 30, 40 years is, rearing its ugly head again, because wrestling has a terrible history with, sexual misconduct.
Oh, I know.
I mean, all you got to do is watch the news right now to see how bad that is, Well, that really wasn't what this was. And it's just, I went on the show. I said, listen, I unfortunately found some things that he did, or I think he did. I can't name names, but I did talk to a few people. Additionally, and Chase should probably note this, if his former students aren't talking to him, they're probably talking to me. So I've heard some things on that front that are not good about Johnny Vegas. So I came to believe it, and I get kind of hot. So I ended up going before New Hampshire is one of the few states in this area that has a boxing and wrestling commission. And I actually went before the Boxing and Wrestling Commission trying to recommend that they do background checks for anybody operating a wrestling school or running shows in the state of New Hampshire. Somewhere between that show and showing up before the New Hampshire Boxing and Wrestling Commission, I made an enemy. So it kind of died down after a while. And then about a year and a half later, a promoter who I barely know, he sends me a message, says, boy, you got a lot of heat with Chaotic, huh? I was like, I guess. I don't know what. He sent me something that Chase Del Monte had sent him. And I'm not going to repeat it. I sent Rob, actually, what was printed about me. I will mention certain things that were said about me. He claimed I was protecting a sexual predator. He claimed I was a cancer, and I was one of the people helping destroy the wrestling business locally, which I find odd because all I was doing was running classes 3 times a month at a wrestling school in New Hampshire. I mean, I got to be really cancerous to really kill you after three sessions. But cancer, I'm super cancer. I'm age cancer, apparently.
And which is funny because you were probably one of the first people to speak out against the artist who paid to pretend to be a wrestler. And we won't say his name because he will sue me. But you were one of the first guys that would, because this guy would pay promoters to wrestle their youngest students, and he would grope them throughout the whole match. And Maverick was one of the first people to confront promoters about that. And suddenly he's protecting sex offenders? I don't think so.
I'm going to tell you a story I've never told anybody publicly, but people were there to witness it. Okay. I was on a show at Liberty States Wrestling many years ago. And my son used to come and help out with my own shows, and occasionally he'd come out to shows that weren't mine and help out because he liked hanging out with his dad. And so the person you're talking about was on the show. Fuck it, he can do whatever he wants. His name is Robbie Ellis. Okay?
Yeah, we'll
fuck it, I'm done hiding. Because again, corroboration. I can corroborate this.
Yeah.
Robbie Ellis, the first time I ever wrestled with him, I was like 19 and just getting started. And even then, even though I just started wrestling, I knew the ways he was like touching me and moving me around in the ring was not wrestling based. Let's just put it that way. So I had to work on them a couple of times. And then like the third time I worked with them, I was like, I just told him, if you touch me, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. That's it. I'm done playing. But anyways, years and years later, he's on the show in Peabody, and my son's there, and I'm looking around. I'm like, I can't believe this fucking guy's still around. And I don't know if Trent knows, but wrestlers shake hands. It's like they'll cut your hand off if you don't run around and shake everybody's hand backstage. All right, so Robbie goes to shake my hand, and there were probably 5 or 6 people standing there. And I looked at him. I looked at him like he was something in the end of my shoe. And I just said, no. And I walked away. He was embarrassed because it was in front of a bunch of people, too. He was really embarrassed. So about 20 minutes later, the locker room's filled up. We're getting ready to start the show. And he knows, a third of the people in the locker room have seen this exchange. So he decides to make a show of it, because he thinks I want to be part of the show. He thinks I want to make nice and make ha-ha, Maverick, this is ridiculous. Let's bury the hatchet. Sticks his hand out. I looked at him and said, get the fuck away from me. I'm not shaking your fucking hand. Go the fuck away before I beat the living fuck out of you. And it got worse from there. Bob Evans was the principal. He had to tell me to shut up because I was about to kill Robbie. And, so I put up with enough. I just really have, But so getting back to the Chase thing, I'm not accusing him of that kind of stuff. But I mean, Nepwa has been through at least one other it's called a sexual blip. So they've had some pressure on them. So, there's probably some uncomfortable eyes looking at them sometimes. So apparently he decided he was going to try and shed the heat by accusing other people of all sorts of malfeasance. So
he went after one of his former trainers too, didn't he?
Yeah.
I don't want to say his name to protect them, but
yeah, I've heard a few things. I haven't talked to him, but I've heard a couple people through other people that, yeah. But I showed you that letter. I mean,
yes, you showed it to me right when it was sent. I remember your message because you were heated.
So, who else saw that letter? My wife. You know who else saw that? My daughter. I just had my grandson like 2 weeks before I got that goddamn letter. I was pissed, I was really pissed.
I thought you were going to go down to the school when I was talking to you.
I messaged him. I told him, listen, I unblocked him, messaged him, and said, listen, what the fuck is your problem? Or something to that effect. I said, you ever say something like that again to me, I'll sue you, And he basically laughed at me. He can't sue me. So then he finds out I'm doing the show. And he contacts a friend of mine, and he tells him, you better tell Maverick not to say anything bad about me, or I'm going to sue him. I was like, wow, are you kidding me?
Well, if you want to sue,
you put your views in writing to other people, and you don't think you can be sued, but you think I'm going to be sued for just telling the truth? Get out of here.
If you want to sue the show, Chase, we have 20 cents in our account. So if you want that 20 cents, we'll throw it at you.
Dude, you're barking up the wrong tree. Leo's invited him on so many times. And Trent, you probably don't know Leo, but you should probably get him on this show too, because he's one of the most genuine people.
I've met him a couple times. I don't really know him well, but I've met him a few times.
He has this very thick Lowell accent, and you would think that would be terrible on interviews, but he just comes across so genuine. Hey, Maverick, so what are you doing? Hey, training up at Next Gen Pro, and he's so excited, and it comes through in his voice with that really tough Lowell accent, and he's as genuine as he's just a genuine guy. Leo's actually become one of my better friends over the years. It really has. It's probably why I've been on his show 42 times.
But yeah, and there's another guy who we both know that we both cannot stand, who's probably might be one of the worst people we're listening. Let's tell some stories about the skunk.
Oh my fucking head. Now you don't have to worry about holding back at all, okay? The skunk is one of the biggest pieces of shit I have ever met, not in wrestling, in my entire life. I could live 5 lives and not meet somebody as scummy as that prick. He was the worst.
He was a customer of mine when I worked at Home Depot, and he actually got banned from the store for sexually harassing a young 19-year-old girl. So
he showed up. First of all, he showed up to be trained by Jeff Costa. Now, I love Jeff Costa, but he does things sometimes I don't agree with. This was one of them. He's like, I'm training this guy. I was like, okay. He showed up with a shirt he claimed had the names of all his sexual conquests on him. He had 5 names on this shirt.
Oh, what the fuck?
One of the names was an apostrophe, I think. Yeah, he'd do moves in the ring, and he'd look at somebody, he'd look at his shirt and point at the name on the shirt and go, "This one's for you, Loretta," and drop a terrible elbow on somebody or something. He was, oh my God, he was such a... One time we were in Methuen, right? And we had to hire a cop. So if we're going to hire a cop, we might as well use him for a joke. So we knew the skunk was on all sorts of stuff. So somebody took some foot powder in a bag and threw it in his duffel bag. And then we talked to the cop, and they're like, "Listen, can you, come in, check on us, and you just happen to look down, and you see this bag of white substance, and you want to start asking questions. You okay with that?" And I don't think most cops are okay with it, but this guy was awesome. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm all over that."
Oh, fuck, he went along with it.
So he goes in, he comes along, "Hey, how you doing, guys?" He looks down, and he sees this duffel bag, and he sees a bag of white powder. Is it? Reaches down and goes, "Whose the hell is this?" And instead of denying it, I said, "No, that's not me." The skunk goes into this mentally deranged diatribe where he's dancing like a chicken. "Oh no, you're not getting me. That's not my Coke." It was like he's running around the dressing room completely deranged while a cop has just accused him of having a bag of cocaine. The cop finally looked at him and said, "If you wanted to prove to me that you're not on cocaine, you're doing it the wrong way." He was horrible. He was a terrible, terrible person.
Oh, he was terrible. He's one of the worst people that ever step in the ring too. He couldn't work anyone.
He was terrible. He was terrible. My buddy Rip always ended up having to work with him because the only one who could tolerate him. Yeah. And besides, my friend Rip could probably bench press about 600 pounds, and if Chris didn't do anything right, he'd just pick him up and heave him around if he had to.
Would you say he got shot on a lot?
I know I did it. Listen, my buddy, I did it a few times, okay? One time I was in practice, and bear in mind, I have a lot of patience for guys that are training how to wrestle. You're going to get washover. You're going to get hit in the forehead when you train these guys. You're going to get hit in the eyeball occasionally. I'm used to that. This kid's a scumbag. I'm not putting up with anything. So I got him in a little full Nelson gimmick, and I think it was Tarzan Taylor. Just comes in and gives him an axe handle, and he whips his head back and goes right into my teeth. I was, "Oh, motherfucker." And I'm bleeding through the mouth. And he turns around and looks at me and goes, "What's your problem?" I literally looked at him. I said, "I don't really have much of a boxing background." All of a sudden, I just started throwing left jabs at him. Whack! Caught him in the eye. And he goes, "Ow!" And he looks at me, gives me this dumb look. And I'm not getting any less mad. So they threw a right at him. Ow! And finally, I'm like, that's it. I'm about to kill you because I'm just getting madder and madder. And then Tarzan Taylor grabbed me around the waist. No, don't hurt him. But I mean, just for I'm just telling the things I did. I mean, he's been in. I think he's been in jail for all sorts of sexual.
And he ran
stuff.
for mayor of Marlboro, and he used to have a public access show.
Didn't he wipe his rear end or blow his nose with the Brazilian flag? Was that what he did?
That's when he got kicked off public access. Yep, that's what he did. And
did he threaten another candidate at one point too? I believe I remember that. Yeah.
And then if you ever, he lives in a trailer park. I driven by his trailer. Okay. All outside is nothing but NASA rockets, and he's telling people he's an engineer for NASA.
He's extremely intelligent.
Yes.
He is. He's I don't know what he did exactly for computer work, but he's extremely intelligent, extremely dumb all at the same time.
Yeah.
He told us a story one time. A business bought a computer system from wherever he worked. It was all the way in Colorado. And they couldn't get it running. They couldn't get it to work. They didn't know what was wrong with it. So they send this guy down. Now, bear in mind, they've probably spent about $300,000 on a computer system at this point. So here comes Chris Antel with a big white streak down the middle of his head and skeeving out on everybody as he gets in the office. I don't know. I'm painting a scenario that may or may not have happened. But what did happen was he went in there and he looks at the system and he reaches under the computer and presses one button. Everything comes on. Which, hey, whatever. He did his job. Yeah. Unfortunately, he turned to the guy that paid for the whole thing and said, "Don't you feel fucking stupid?" I was like, "Yeah, they fired me." I was like, "Of course they fired you. What's wrong with you? You can't do that. What's wrong with you?" But we played gags on him. One time we told him that he was a referee at one point for Jeff, and we told him the New Hampshire Boxing and Wrestling Commission they want to drug test all the referees and wrestlers. So they're not here tonight. So you're going to go in the bathroom, and we got to take a picture of you filling up a bottle. So for the longest time, for like a month, they had this picture, and they tried taking it to local cake shops because we're having like our annual banquet. And they were going to try and have an airbrush of him filling the bottle onto the cake and talk anybody into it. I was like, oh, that'd have been so good. But I remember the pictures were in Rip's van, which was a mess because it just carried the ring and whatever else we did during that night. And I remember every once in a while we'd be foraging for the van. We'd actually find that picture. We'd just piss ourselves laughing. And just, because he's scum. He's just scum. He really is. He's a terrible person.
He's living in Peru now.
Huh?
He lives in Peru. He lost the bet and had to move out of the country. He made a bet with somebody, and I don't know what the bet was, but he had to move to Peru. So he's some other nation's problem now.
I think the bet was, I bet you can't outrun this restraining order. Yes, I can! Peru, baby! Good. He can get shot by the militia. Good thing for him.
Another thing about you that we're doing, as you know, I booked the female talent for Sheldon. And this was back in the early 2000s when the male wrestlers really didn't like women being promoted in their show. And we were trying to promote them seriously, opposed to how they were promoted in the past. Like every show having Brittany Brown versus Brandy Alexander on it. We wanted to make it more of a division. So, and a lot of the boys had a problem with that. You were one of the first to stand up for the women wrestlers. Not only that, you wanted to wrestle Mercedes Martinez on a show to prove a point.
So here's the thing. Normally, I don't like men versus women. I don't. I really don't. I believe wrestling is best when it's really what it's supposed to be. It's simulated combat. But to do simulated combat, I think it has to have a basis in reality. So that's part of the reason I'm not big on men and women mixing it up, because realistically in real life, 95% of the time, the guy kicked the living crap out of the woman, And I think sometimes when they do those matches, it makes light to some degree of like domestic abuse.
I agree.
Yeah.
I've never liked that. However, she was a special case because Sheldon, I don't think he was running the WWW shows yet. He was using her on every show, and basically she'd work with everybody she could at that point. And at the same point, so was I. So had I. And at the same time, I was looking at the card, and I don't mean, I'm not going to mention any names, but at that point on Sheldon's shows, the whining was unbelievable.
Yep.
I've always had the theory, because I never gave a shit about making money at this. So when I could go to a place and I didn't like the place, I would just go, well, whatever. I'll go down the street and take the other guy's $25. What's it matter? But they would say that there were a lot of guys, they would just sit there and they were complaining about how things were done. The only one who wasn't complaining was like Antonio Thomas and her, frankly. Yeah. And honestly, she was about, she's a thick woman. She's probably about 155, even at that age. And really at that point, I'm fat as hell now, but I was only about 175, 180 myself. I said, we can have this match, and I'm going to do it to prove a point. I'd rather work with somebody that's not going to complain, And it was a very good match. It was a very good match. It was, I don't think it was played out don't think it was played out like, why are you letting a small woman destroy you in a match? It was played out very competitively, but it was definitely cat and mouse. I was definitely the cat. But it was a really good match, and I really enjoyed it. I really did.
She could really work. She should have if she came out 10 years later, she would have been a huge star.
So that was always the problem with the women at that point. And this isn't their fault, but there just wasn't that many women workers at that point. It's all a game of percentages, okay? People get into this, guys get into this, and probably only 20% of them are really good, and then another 20% are decent, and then after that, it really falls off. Well, the percentage is the same for the women. The problem is there weren't as many of them. So, my percentage of men would be based on 100 case subjects. The women, it's 10. So I think they had it really tough, because sometimes you don't improve if you don't work with people that are good, and they had a tough run of it. But then again, at this point, if you watch TV, I truly think the best worker in the world, not the best woman worker, but the best worker in the world is Rhea Ripley.
Oh, she's amazing.
She's the best, as far as I'm concerned, she's the best worker in the world. What that does for other women in the sport, and I'm calling it a sport, unfortunately, it raises the bar for them. It's like, I'm sorry, there used to be a term in wrestling that's good enough for a women's match, because they weren't treated seriously. They were treated either as eye candy or they were a special attraction, like the LPs, pretty much. Yeah, let me be political correct, calling midgets LPs, and I just screwed it up. But no, seriously, they were treated as a novelty on the card, and that's not the case anymore.
No, they're taken seriously now.
They're close. They're as close, and I think she probably draws as much as most men on that roster at this point. I mean, she's not The Rock. She's not, but as far as one of the working minions, I think she's one of the biggest draws they have. She's really good. Yeah,
and there's a lot of like Becky Lynch is another one who makes money. I mean, and she started out, her first U.S. match was in Framingham, Massachusetts at the Civic League for us.
Yep, yes, it was.
18-year-old girl, and
who doesn't really get the credit that it deserves for those women, for the initial influx of women being really treated seriously for their matches and stuff. It's Fit Finlay. Yep. Fit Finlay did so much with like Trish Stratus and Lita and a few of the other girls, and they were actually having very good matches because of him. I guess he has his own rep, but there's no taking away what he showed them. And he really, with those two women and him, they really kind of started a bit of a revolution. Now they can take it seriously.
At one point, it just those bra and panty matches. You don't see those. Those are gone by the wayside. The women are just as much as the men now, which is something I always wanted to happen, and I'm glad it did.
Well, I was thinking of coming back, but doing a bra and panties match, so hopefully you don't want to see that.
That's what I was thinking when you were talking about women just being eye candy and stuff back in the day. Yeah, stuff like that, like just bra and panties matches where they would have like the lingerie swimsuit contests. Not real matches.
No, but at the same time, you got to think, I actually predate that kind of shit. I had my first match in 1988, 1989, and the women were not dressed up extremely sexually. They had some good ones. Brittany Brown was pretty decent. She was pretty decent. They had some good workers. It wasn't in a way, it was even worse for them because at least, you know, the women doing those bra and panty matches, they were selling their soul for money, you know, but at least they were making money, you know, I guess. But it's far better now. It really is. It's not a joke like it used to be.
And then you run on we'll call them the little people wrestlers. Mm-hmm. Those guys are some of the craziest people you'll ever meet in your goddamn life.
Oh,
one of my favorite guys who I found out now is actually a devoted father is Tiny the Terrible. You got any Tiny the Terrible stories?
Tiny the Terrible.
He's
Jeff
hilarious.
One time he showed up in Peabody, and Jeff tried to write him a check. And Tiny tried telling him, my lawyer says I can't take a check. I said, you're a fucking lawyer. Get the fuck out. But then another time, so we ran the show we ran the hall like 3 weeks later, and Tiny was supposed to be on the card, and Tiny didn't show up. And there was a guy, I don't even know if Rob knows him. His name was Butcher Hughes.
I know the name. I don't think I've ever met him.
He was delightfully insane. He just started screaming, those goddamn midgets, they fucked up the draw! He was insane. I loved him.
My story about Tiny the Terrible was on a show one time, and all of a sudden he pulls out his dick, and I mean, God stopped at his dick because I've never seen such a big one on such a little person.
It's God's joke, isn't it? God's little joke.
It really was.
I've never seen Tiny's penis. I'm okay with that.
I was gonna say it sounds like you're missing out.
Like, not that I haven't seen plenty of them, you know, but you know, I just never happened to see his. So, you know.
Yeah, but it's crazy. He's now a devoted father, I believe, too. Which all the stuff he did that makes me laugh my ass off. That he's now.
I don't know how much of an accomplishment that is, Rob. I know guys that I know a couple of people that wrestled in a Mexican prison, and their family showed up for that day. Well, you know, they seem pretty devoted too.
Now, from when you trained and started, and from how it is now, what do you think is better, the schools then or the schools now?
What's better and worse is the access is a lot easier. I mean, I had to, you know, so I petitioned Killer Kowalski. I sent him pictures, and, you know, of course, I know you had to pay. I wasn't looking for a freebie or tuition. But back then, he could be selective, and, you know, he really could, because it was a closed business when I first got into it, or it was just starting to become not a closed business. So oddly enough, Killer Kowalski had no interest in a picture of some guy in a pair of spandex jogging shorts with a pair of red tiger stripe underwear put over the top to make him look like a wrestler. And me holding a kitten in one picture. Apparently this was not conductive to, you know, a wrestling student. But I ended up having to go to the matches in Gardner, Massachusetts, right down the street from me. And I ended up having to hook up with a guy named Brian Walsh to get private training. So you had to kind of go to those lengths back then if you really wanted to get into this. So the access is easier. So it's good that the access is easier. The problem is the access is easier. Too many people get in that probably are not suited for it. Or frankly, even worse, the people that are providing them the access, they're probably not qualified to provide them the access. I think that's the bigger problem, if that makes any sense. You know,
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And then,
because I've again, another old saying we have is sometimes you're not a veteran. Sometimes you're just fucking old. You know, I know guys that I'm a veteran. I was like, you've had 10 matches in 20 years. You're not a fucking veteran. Get the fuck out of here. What the fuck is wrong with you? Get your head out of your ass.
As I remember, I was at a Ring of Honor show. It was their first one in Massachusetts, and they had you versus Alex Arion.
Poor them.
That was quite the match.
That was me and Alex Arion sped up to 3 times our normal speed. So we get there and they said, "You got 4 minutes." I said, "Hey, whatever, okay." People, "Oh, you work for Ring of Honor?" No, Sheldon did advertising for Ring of Honor as a favor. They put me and Alex on the show. I don't really. I guess I could claim I work for Ring of Honor, but not really. You know, I like to say that I've had lunch with a lot of people, but I've had to pay for the lunch. So.
And then you did TV work for WCW and WWF at the time. Actually, one of your old episodes is I was watching on the network the other day when I couldn't sleep.
Yeah, well, one of my matches will definitely put you to sleep. So, so early on, those WWF tapings. Oh my God, what a mess they were! It was just.
They were like 6 hours long, right?
Oh, they're terrible. Yeah. They went on forever. And, it was like, I can't imagine paying big money to see a hall full of guys like me, paying big money to see some fat nobody, So I don't know how people sat through those goddamn tapings. I think it was there the night that Jim Cornette and the Heavenly Bodies debuted. I think it was in Whitehorse or White Plains, New York. I remember specifically Cornette getting on the microphone and saying about how he heard all these great stories, these big stories about the World Wrestling Federation. And my first show in here, we're in a fucking horse barn.
Yeah, they were in some crazy venues back then.
Well, they weren't making much money. They kept it all on the East Coast. That's how guys like me ended up being on TV a lot. I don't like to brag about the TV work because in an era when I was doing it, if you lived in New England, New York, or Philadelphia, you owned a pair of wrestling trunks and a pair of boots, you get on TV once because they just needed bodies to get beat up. And if they thought you were any good, they'd bring you back. I saw a few people not come back. They kept using me. I was nothing special. I could bump and sell, but that's all they really needed out of me. So I did that. It was not a great accomplishment back then. Now when guys go and they show up, it's a lot more selective. Occasionally get a dark match if you're that means a lot more than what I was doing. So I always downplay that because it really wasn't a big deal.
Well, you were on an episode of Nitro. I remember.
Yeah. So that one was a little bit of a bigger deal. I don't brag much. And again, I don't like women and men situations. I don't. So that's a funny story. I got on the plane and they had Brian Walsh come down with me. They flew him down there. He didn't work. I soon discovered the reason they brought Brian Walsh down was in case that I backed out of, taking bumps for Jackie in a match with Kevin Sullivan. And I almost did, to be honest with you. I was on the phone with Jeff Costa, from Florida. Yeah, they want me to get beat up by the woman. I'm buying a plane ticket and getting the fuck out of here. And he was the one who talked me into staying. He can't do that. Jesus Christ. It'd be blackballed forever. I was like, I don't care. But, so I went and did it. And I will say this. Like Doc Dean from and Robbie Brookside, I think it is. They were in from England. And they had actually they taped it. What did they do? Universal Studios?
Or Disney. They taped at Disney.
So, Disney. They worked with Sullivan and took bumps for Jackie first, but it was in the can. It was taped. So mine was live, and I went out there. I bumped my ass off. I really did, because I just figured if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it right. And the one thing I'll brag about is I don't think she'd have ever gotten over as much if somebody had put her over quite that much that night. It did have something to do with it.
She was one tough broad, too.
Oh, she was, and she deserved it. Don't get me wrong, but I saw people do it after me, and I was like, you're not putting the effort in that I did. Screw it. Like I saw Disco Inferno work with her. I was like, shit.
I remember that match. That was terrible.
Shit.
Kevin Sullivan would come up here every month for Tony Rumble too.
Kevin's a good guy. I learned that one match. I learned a lot about. Now I'm a 5'9" guy. I'm not a big professional wrestler. Kevin Sullivan legit is probably only about 5'6".
Yeah.
If you watch that match I had with him, there's like one time in like 4 minutes you can tell I'm taller than him. He literally just kept you cut down, never let you stand up. He didn't want you standing up all of a sudden like, wow, this guy's a head taller than him, for Christ's sakes. He kept you down. It was a method of working. It was part of how he kept himself over is like, because everybody he worked with was legitimately taller than him for the most part, but he just like well, you're not taller than me when you're on your knees, so bang, it just kept you there, you know.
Those Tony Rumble shows were something else. Yeah, I know you worked a few of them.
I did work a few. I like Tony. You know,
I wish Tony didn't pass as young as he did, because I think he would have done something.
Yeah, I mean, Tony was a very. If anybody, there were two guys, and this is no offense to anybody else who's running shows around here. If there were two guys, I always thought were going to be able to run consistently, not like a territory, but guys that could get up to like 50, 60 shows a year. Jeff did it. Jeff Costa did it for a couple of years. And I think Rumble spent more money on his shows. Jeff was more about a package deal. Let's go in there. Let's go in there cheap. We'll go into small towns in New Hampshire, and we'll draw 150 people. We'll get the fuck out of there. We'll have money, you know. And he kept it, you know, fairly. Tony approached it differently. He approached it. He was running in more metro areas, so he approached it with a more metro type of card, you know. And he would bring in the guys like from Michinoku Pro and things of that nature. And, you know, Kevin Sullivan would always be up, who I always liked talking to. Yeah, it was a shame when Tony passed, because I thought really him and Jeff were the only two in the area that really could open it up. There'd be a lot of shows, you know, out of one guy, you know. And Jeff was running more than he was, but I think Tony was probably making a little more on his shows. You know, they had a different theory about how to run shows, but they were running close to the same amount, you know. And I always thought Tony would take off at some point. And I think his untimely death kind of curtailed that, unfortunately. He was a good guy. He really was. I remember my wife was sick, and I had to call out on one show. I said, "Oh, brother, don't worry about it. You know, you got to take care of your family first. You know, you're coming here for a $30 payday. It's fucking bullshit. Don't worry about it." You know, he's very honest.
Yeah,
nice guy. I didn't know him as well as some people, but any interaction I ever with Tony was very, very good.
I only knew him a little bit because my family used to spend summers on Salisbury Beach, right when Champs Arena started. So I used to help Big City Mike set up the buildings and all that. I got to know a lot of the different promoters and a lot of the wrestlers and stuff. And I even went to that one ECW show that was up there. That was a great building. You worked Champs Arena, right?
A couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Samu wanted to kill me. Well, no, I was wrestling Sonny Goodspeed up there. I think one of the two times I actually appeared up there. And I've had shoulder problems forever. Like I said, April 10th, I'm actually having my left shoulder replaced. So on that show, I separated my shoulder, which I had done several times before. And to be honest with you, the shoulder that was hurt, I've been stabbed in it. So I played football on it, and it was I wrecked it before I got into wrestling. So I took a bad bump, and my whole shoulder just went pop. And then Samu, somebody didn't show up. He was in a tag team match. It's like, yeah, well, we'll use that guy. He looks pretty good. And I'm like, I'm hurt. I'm sorry. He was like, oh, no, I'll take care of you. I was like, no, I'm hurt. And I think he took it as a personal insult, like, well, fuck you. What do you think? I'm going to hurt you worse? And it's like, it's more than likely I'll hurt myself worse. But no, it's just there's no need for me to work. There's other people here, you know. I think what the real problem was he got stuck with a couple of let's call them flea bags, and he wasn't very happy with the match, you know. So he kind of is a little miffed at me, and I guess he's not a good person to have miffed at you. So
no,
he didn't. Whatever. Had a couple of beers afterwards. Seemed fine.
Yeah. I was too young back then to go to the bars after the shows, but I remember that used to be a big part of going up there.
Oh, we didn't go to the bar. They rented out a beach house the first year they had there. I called it a den of inequity. My buddy Rip was training the guys at Champs when they first went in there, and he lived at the beach house for the summer. He credits it with the loss of one relationship with a woman. All I know is the one time I went to the beach house, it was like a scene out of is it 16 Candles where they walk into the geeks walk into the party, and all of a sudden they back into a pile of beer cans and just spills over on top of a bunch of jocks. And they're ready to kill them. That's what that beach house was like. I literally bumped into like a wall of beer cans. It was just the drinking that went on out there was ridiculous. And some of the other stories are I didn't participate, but I've heard some doozies. So yeah, I was never a big partier. So but yeah, they had a beach house up there, and all sorts of mavelids went on there apparently.
Well, we got to wrap up. Thank you for coming on. Is there anything you want to plug or anything?
What do I have to plug? No, like I said, I've never been into making money, so I got nothing really to plug. I'm out of wrestling. I'll be on Leo's show probably the next couple of weeks. I don't have a date.
Trenton, do you have anything you want to put in before we go?
No, just thank you for coming on as a guest. It was interesting listening to all the stories you had.
Well, thank you for listening to my ramblings. They get a little disjointed. I was pretty focused tonight, though. So you got non-CTE math tonight, I guess. So
well, we learned a lot. We had some good stories and some good content. I'm sure it's gonna be the talk of the internet. But
okay, hey, whatever. Hey, thank you for having me, and thanks for talking to me over the years, Rob. Because me and you
good luck with your surgery.
Yeah, good luck on this roller.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm sure it'll be fine. All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Have a good night. Well, everybody, we'll see you next week, Thursday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, Trenton, Canadian time.
Yep. Catch you next week, guys.
Trenton Peterson, yay! Rob Marco, yay! The Messed Up Dude podcast, yay!